Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Renewable Heat Now March Power Hour. My name is Lisa Marshall. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Horseheads, New York. I work for New Yorkers for Clean Power. We are a statewide climate and clean energy campaign. And I'm very excited to be here with you tonight with our great group of Renewable Heat Now leaders. We have Laura Schindel from Food and Water Watch. We have Claire Henry from the Climate Solutions Accelerator. And we have Andra Lehmanis from Agree New York or Alliance for Green Economy. We also are going to have with us a special guest presenter tonight, Juan Pablo Velez from Wind Climate, who is going to share with you information from the very new report that just was released earlier this week. So it's hot off the presses. And then we're going to go over, next slide, please, Claire. So here's our agenda for tonight. We are going to just do a little intro to the Renewable Heat Now campaign for anyone who might be new. We're going to talk about the New York Heat Act and where we are with moving this, our signature piece of legislation. We're going to get the new report from Wind Climate. We're going to prepare to mobilize to Albany next week on Wednesday, the 13th of March. We're going to take action together, and then we're going to sign up for next month's grassroots meeting, our April Power Hour on the 4th. Next slide, please. Renewable Heat Now. Who are we and what do we do? Renewable Heat Now is a statewide campaign to promote the adoption of heat pumps in New York and to swiftly and equitably transition New York's buildings off of fossil fuels to heat pump technologies and efficient electric appliances. And we have been around for, I think, 7 or 8 years now. We are not an organization. This is a campaign that is run by 20 or more organizations collaboratively. We don't have, a staff or a website. We do have a website. We don't have specific staff or funding just for Renewable Heat Now. It's something we all work on together in a very collaborative way. This is grassroots groups, big green groups, policy wonks, radical activists, and sort of everybody in between who wants to work on together to make a really good progress in kicking fossil fuels out of buildings in New York and reducing emissions from our building sector. Next slide, please. Well, why do we focus on buildings? Buildings are the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in New York State. And the emissions are from burning fossil fuels for heating, that's most of it, but also for hot water and cooking. And also, very importantly, the leaked methane or leaked natural gas that happens from the moment that you start to extract gas from the ground via fracking, moving it along the pipelines through compressor stations, through the whole gas distribution system and right into your house. And there it continues to leak actually from your stove and other things. So methane we know is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So when we count the emissions from buildings, we're counting two buckets of emissions. One is the leaked methane gas, and one is the carbon dioxide that is formed once you burn methane gas in your furnace or stove. So there, if you combine those two sources of greenhouse gas emissions, you come up with more than a third of all of the greenhouse gas emissions in New York State, which, as you guys know, is one of the biggest economies in the world. If New York was a country, it would be the 11th biggest economy. We have millions of people and millions of buildings. So what we do here really matters. So that's why Renewable Heat Now is really focused on this building sector. Next slide, please. So as I think everybody on this call probably already knows, we have been working very hard to pass something called the New York Heat Act. Heat stands for Home Energy Affordable Transition. And this bill is, I would say, I really consider this the most important climate and energy affordability bill to be at play in New York since we passed the CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, way back in 2019. we passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that said we needed to reduce emissions from all sectors. That's power generation, transportation, and buildings. And the New York Heat Act is absolutely essential for us to pass so that we can start to actually reduce emissions from our buildings. We haven't gotten around to doing that yet, and there's a couple of reasons why. So this bill has four really big buckets of advantages for New Yorkers. It will help us reduce emissions, and that's going to help stave off the worst impacts of climate change. It's a health and safety bill. We know that gas is unsafe. It impacts your health. It impacts indoor air quality. It causes you know, explosions just like happened last week in Sullivan County, earlier this year in Oneonta, late last fall in Wappingers Falls, etc. Gas is an unsafe fossil fuel, whether you're breathing it or burning it. It's really something we don't want to have in our buildings anymore. As soon as we can figure out how to get off of it, we want to do that. This is also going to really help our jobs and economy, because when we're going to move off of one system, we're going to have to build another system. And in this case, we're going to have to build in a lot of places something called thermal energy networks. That's where a bunch of buildings are connected together via water pipes in the ground so they can share heat energy around, and they can heat, cool, and do their hot water off of these thermal energy networks. For those of you who got the chance to be, there was a fantastic conference on this in Albany. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. I think if you had been there, you would have been extremely excited to learn about this potential to network clean energy in buildings. And it's also very important for energy affordability, because the New York Heat Act, one of the things that it does is it contains a provision to limit energy bills for households to 6% of the household's income. And you're going to hear a lot more about that last one from Juan Pablo Velez, our special guest, in a couple of minutes, on this amazing new report that New York Renews commissioned from Wind Climate. So we've been trying to pass the New York Heat Act. This is our third year. We have built a lot of momentum and a lot of power. And let's just go to the next slide and look at where we are. Our strategy is to pass New York Heat in the budget. And you might ask why, because it actually doesn't directly impact our budget. So why would we do this? Well, it's a pretty politically tough bill to pass, because the gas industry and the business council and a lot of powerful entities are really working hard to try to stop it. And in New York, one of the ways that we've been able to overcome something that's politically difficult is by passing it in the budget. And we know the governor's plan, what she would prefer to do is pass it in the budget. We know this because she got a chance to put her version of the budget out in January, and she put big pieces of the New York Heat Act into her budget. So where we are in New York is that from January through March, what the legislature works on is just the budget. And so right now is the time we're really pushing as hard as we possibly can, because early next week we expect the Assembly and the Senate, those are the two arms of the legislature, to come out with their versions. So the governor puts out hers. Think of it as a poker game. She's got her hand, and now we want to know if the other two houses are going to raise her, do a better version that includes the whole New York Heat Act or not. And then after we see those one house budgets, there's a very stressful time called the three-way negotiation, where the leadership of the Assembly, the leadership of the Senate, and the governor's staff duke it out and figure out what's going to end up in the final budget. So what we need to have happen is the strongest possible version of the New York Heat Act be in both the Senate and the Assembly budgets. Where are we with that? Well, the governor put two big pieces of the New York Heat Act that help transition the gas system and stop us from subsidizing the gas system into her budget, but she didn't put that 6% household affordability part in. She left that out, which is a big part of this bill. We don't know yet what the Senate and the Assembly are going to do, but we can tell you what the vibes are. The vibes are that the Senate is on our side. We can say that because the last 2 years, they've put it in their budget. They also last year voted it off the floor, meaning that after the budget was over, they put it through all their committees and they took it to a floor vote and they voted on it. So we feel pretty good about the Senate. We don't want to stop talking to our senators, but the vibes are good. Then we turn to the Assembly. How are the vibes there? The Assembly has this thing that they love to say, which is, we don't do policy in the budget. We only do budget in the budget. Sounds like a very reasonable way to go. But the truth is, if they really want to pass something, they put it in the budget all the time. This is not true. So the Assembly is right now where we are targeting the most, our Assembly members, and that's the Democrats. We're not worried about the Republicans. They're not in power. They don't get to be part of the three-way budget negotiation. They can say whatever they want, but they really have no impact on the outcome of this. So what we're really focused on is the Democrats in the Assembly, getting them to push as hard as they can to put the New York Heat Act in the Assembly budget. And then once that comes out, we're on Monday or Tuesday, we're going to be in Albany on Wednesday and we'll know what they said. So we could be in Albany cheering and celebrating, or we could be in Albany having to sort of take it to the mat and say, this is not good enough. We won't stand for this. And we will not find that out until shortly before we get on those buses. So this is a very exciting time. And we're going to be asking you guys in the next, today on this call and in the next few weeks to be relentless in reaching out to your Dem Assembly members and to the Assembly leadership. And probably, but we're going to have to reach back out to the governor too, because she didn't put that affordability piece in her budget. And now it's time for her to negotiate and come to the table. So that was a lot of words and I apologize, but that's where we're at right now. So if you want to sort of a quick recap, the vibes from the governor are pretty okay. The vibes from the Senate are great. And the vibes from the Assembly are kind of so-so. So let's go to the next slide and have, I'd love to introduce, hopefully Juan Pablo, you are here. If somebody could make him a co-host and let's spotlight him. Juan Pablo Velez, who is an absolute genius and a number crunching guy who has just created this report that was commissioned by our wonderful friends and allies at New York Renews, who are also working on New York Heat as well as many other important climate things. And Juan Pablo, I'm just going to turn it over to you. At this point, I'm going to mute myself and let's see where you are.
I'm here. Could you please turn off your screen sharing so I can start mine?
Okay. Claire, and can you turn your camera on, Juan Pablo, so we can spotlight you, please? Or is that not going to work?
It'll work, but you'll find that I'm in my car, so not much of a genius here. Okay. Can folks see my screen?
Yes, the screen looks good. Take it away.
Okay, perfect. So I'm the executive director of a think tank called Win Climate. We basically produce data for movements like Renewable Heat Now to help them pass ambitious climate policy at the state level. I am a numbers guy, but in a past life, I was a journalist, so I understand the qualitative parts too. And but this is all going to be numbers, and it's we're going to kind of unpack what the affordability part of New York Heat would do if it was fully implemented. So just a quick plug that this research was funded by New York Renews, this major coalition that was kind of the force behind the Climate Act here in New York State. And the question we answered with this study was, if they fully implemented the 6% affordability provision, and I'll explain what that is in a second, how much money would that save for New Yorkers in general? So New York Heat, among many other things, basically sets a goal to the state to work towards keeping everybody's bills under 6% of their annual income. This is called an energy burden calculation. It's the percentage of an annual income spent on energy bills. So, for instance, if a family makes $30,000, they're spending $33,000 a year on gas and electricity, they have a burden, an energy burden of 10%. Pretty straightforward. And so households above 6% are considered highly energy burdened. This is kind of a convention in for people who care about affordability. And the reason for this is above 6%, a lot of households start to have to choose between keeping the lights on and keeping the heat on and food and other necessities. So it's pretty important that we kind of keep people under 6%. And so that leads to the question naturally, which is, how many of the households in New York State are currently highly burdened? Turns out it's about 1 in 4, which I found actually pretty surprising. And this is after we factor in existing government programs to try to help people with their bills. And so what does that look like? It looks like if you look at that 1 in 4 who are highly burdened and you ask what's their average monthly bill, it's about $300 a month, which might look similar to your bill or maybe not. But if it does, then it would reflect the fact that a lot of folks are not making a lot of income in the state. So now to get a little bit nerdier, because I think the picture is very helpful. So this is a chart of take every household in the state and plot them based on what their energy burden is. So what percentage of last year's income went to energy bills? What you see is that a lot of folks are beneath 6%. The most common is actually 2%, believe it or not. But then there's this kind of long tail of households that are spending 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or even 25% of their income just on energy. So as you might imagine, the higher the burden is, probably the lower the income of that household. But this is what things look like now. And it varies a little bit across the state. So the burden is lower. It's about 1 in 4 on Long Island and New York City and the Capital District. And get up to almost a third in and then the biggest sort of delta in the state is Manhattan to the Bronx, which is 14% burden versus 1 in 3. Okay, so if this is today, what impact would New York Heat have? Well, it would take this picture of burden and turn it into this. Basically, what just happened is we took all the folks who are above 6%, that kind of red area, and we pushed them all into 6%, or almost all. There's some residual folks who are still paying above that because New York Heat only counts towards your electricity and natural gas bills. So if you're paying for propane or heating oil, it probably wouldn't help you. I mean, it sort of depends a little bit of how the state interprets it, but that's the way we interpreted it. So this is pretty significant. It really kind of puts a hard ceiling on energy burdens on the state. And to do that, it would cut the bills of these 1 in 4 households that are burdened by almost in half, so 44%, which works out to $136 every month in their pocket. And here too, the savings vary a little bit across the state. They average around 120, 130, but then Westchester and Long Island get onto the 160s because gas prices are more expensive there than other parts of the state. And within New York City, similar kind of story. Manhattan saves the least, and then Staten Island and Queens get up to 150s. And so if you count all these households, it's about 1.4 million households, pretty significant, and 92% of them are what are called lower moderate incomes. So these are folks that are making less than 80% of the median in their county. So you look at all the households in a county, you find what the middle household income is, and you take 80% of that. And all those folks below 80% are low moderate income. So they make up the bulk of the folks who are highly burdened and therefore whose bills would be cut under New York Heat. Now, one important thing to note is we're not specifying how that outcome would be achieved. We're just saying, what does it mean to hit that goal? What would it mean to actually for the state to hit the target? And there's a lot of ways that they can go about doing that. They could try to reform their current program for doing that, which gives people bill credits. Problem is it only reaches about half the people it could at the moment. But they could also potentially subsidize solar panels or do energy efficiency or any number of other approaches that New York Heat requires them to study. That's part of the bill, is take a fresh stab at this problem. That's and we've done a series of regional and county versions of this. So if you're curious, like, okay, what does this look like, around Rochester or around in the Hudson Valley and so on, we've made a number of one pagers, and I will link to them now so you can check them out. And that's all I got for you.
Thank you so much, Juan Pablo. Folks, we don't have time for Q&A, but if you have questions for Juan Pablo, please type them in the chat. I know that was a lot of information. I think it's really compelling and a very clear and easy to understand report. And that's just, it was very shocking to me, even though I've been up front and close with many households trying to help them, how many highly energy burdened households there really are. And just the most inequitable thing imaginable, thinking about how much these households have to pay to keep the lights on and the heat on. So that part again was left out of the governor's budget. And so part of what we're going to really be pushing for is to make sure that the I won't say energy affordability, because the other parts of New York Heat are also going to contribute to energy affordability, but there's a big difference between cutting your utility bill in the short term and also which this 6% would do versus putting off future costs that might arise by the gas system being perpetuated. So it doesn't feel quite as satisfying, even though we know it's really important to not continue to make gas investments that we'll have to pay for generations to come. It doesn't feel quite as helpful to the average person just trying to pay their bills and keep the lights on as actually providing bill relief. So I'm calling it bill relief because there's energy affordability is throughout this whole bill. No matter what the opposition tries to tell you, that's just not true. So we thank you so much to Juan Pablo. I really appreciate you coming on the call tonight. And okay, so is this me or am I turning this over to you now, Laura?
I think it's my turn. Hey, everyone.
Hey, turning it to Laura Shandell.
Hey, I'm Laura. I am an organizer with Food and Water Watch. Thanks all for being here tonight. So hopefully seeing that data jazzed you up to get New York Heat passed in the budget. We've got work to do. If politicians just listened to data and science, we would have a well-functioning world, which we know we do not. So, we need the facts and figures, but we also need to build the political will to get this done. So we've been doing that with regional events, with calls and emails, with lobbying. I'm sure you all have done a whole host of things to push for New York Heat, but I wanted to spend some time talking about our upcoming mass mobilization coming up this Wednesday, March 13th. We are going back to Albany to fill the halls of power with people power and make it known that New York Heat is a huge priority for anyone who cares about lower bills and cleaner heat and climate and all of it. So go ahead and put yourself in the right in the chat if you know you are already signed up for Wednesday's mass mobilization in Albany, March 13th. I am seeing a couple people. Awesome. Yay. Excellent. And if you're not signed up yet, there will be a link put in the chat where you can sign up and make sure that you're registered. These days when we go to Albany are long days, but we do them because they are empowering and they work. It really means something when the legislators see tons of people up there speaking on behalf of issue that they care about. So and we need this to be front of mind as budget negotiations happen, because we know we have a lot of support in the legislature. We have a majority of the assembly as co-sponsors, but there's a difference between passive support and champion support, right? Like we have all these co-sponsors, but we need them to really go to battle for New York Heat so that it doesn't get stripped down, so that they don't say, oh, we'll do this next year, you know, oh, whatever excuse that they come up with. So us being present in Albany is our way of holding their feet to the fire to say, hey, there's, you know, hundreds or even thousands of people who will notice if you don't pass this bill this year, and hold them accountable. So we have to be there in person to make sure that our democracy functions and that our legislators represent our interests. So come up on Wednesday. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have in store. But
And there's a lot
yeah.
of questions about where the buses are and when. You want to address that now?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for flagging that. So there will be a Manhattan bus and a Brooklyn bus. They are both leaving at 7:15 a.m. on Wednesday morning. The Brooklyn bus is meeting by the Barclays Center, across from the Old Navy. And the Manhattan bus is leaving from 34th Street and 8th Avenue across from the TikTok Diner. And then the Manhattan bus will be making a quick pit stop at the Palisades Mall in Rockland County as well, picking up anybody who would like to get on the bus in Rockland County. And that is where we have buses coming from. If you are interested in coming and you are not from one of those regions, there is a carpool link available on the sign up link, where hopefully you can get linked up with someone from your region. On Atlantic Avenue, not Flatbush. I think it is Atlantic Avenue. Yes, 625 Atlantic Avenue across from the Old Navy. Thanks for putting those details in the chat there. So that's the busing plan. And help us fill these buses. There are still plenty of spaces left. And so if you haven't recruited some friends to join you, please do so. The more people, the better. And we always have a fun time on the bus and provide bagels and coffee. And you can take a nap too on the way up there, because it is an early morning, but we try to keep it fun and do all the transportation for you so you can sit back and relax. Great. Yeah, so I'll talk about the schedule for the day and what you can expect in Albany. So Whether you're arriving by bus or independently or via carpool, we want people to arrive sometime around 11 or so, just to gather, check in, put your stuff down, get prepared for the day. We have 2 rooms reserved that will be our home bases, which Andra will talk about more in a moment. Then we will have an exciting rally with legislators and youth speakers between noon and 1 o'clock at the grand $1 million staircase. So, you'll wave signs and chant, and that will be our sort of like press-worthy part of the day. And then we have free lunch provided back to those that home base rooms area. And we have a variety of lunches that are getting procured. Bring your reusable water bottle. We'll have jugs of water as well. And then depending on some people will get different assignments for the day. There will be some traditional lobbying taking place. And when I say traditional lobbying, I mean we have a meeting set up with an office scheduled, and you go with a small group of people and have that lobby meeting. So that will be happening. But we're also going to do lobbying like in the hallways as legislators walk by, and catching them as they go and asking, hey, will you take a photo? Or, hey, will you make sure New York Heat gets passed in the budget, and making sure that we're very visible. And there's also going to be lobbying that is kind of spontaneous, impromptu drop-offs. So this is when you just show up at their office and say, hi, I'm dropping off materials for New York Heat, and just making sure your presence is known. So we're going to do all sorts of variety of levels of lobbying between 2 and 4 o'clock. And then we will board our buses and return home. And make sure that everything gets posted on social media and amplified, so that our impact is lasting, and so that the legislators know their feet really are held to the fire. So it's not just us that knows, the whole world of the internet knows that they need to pass this. So I see, yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about the various forms of lobbying. So traditional lobbying, if you were with us for our January mobilization on New York Heat, this is the sort of lobbying that we did. Traditional lobbying means we have a meeting scheduled, we show up in a small group, and we have asks to make. So as far as who we're lobbying for these traditional lobby meetings, these are a lot of Assembly Democrats who maybe we didn't get to have a meeting with in January, or we need to re-up New York Heat for whatever reason. But we've been doing so much lobbying all session, both in January, at our big mobilization, as well as in district and virtually. And so a lot of these legislators are actually kind of lobbied out. When we've asked for lobby meetings, they say, well, we've already met with you like 3 times. How many more times do you want to meet with us? So we have less traditional lobby meetings set up this go around, but that's because we've really done such a thorough job already in lobbying them up until this point, which is exactly what we've needed to do. Because we've needed their advocacy all session, not just in this 11th hour before or right after the One House budgets come out. So that's why we're adding in these other kind of new, different kinds of lobbying as well. So we're line the halls lobbying is, see that long corridor in that photo, we're gonna have a huge mass of us down, fill that hallway. And that hallway is where all the legislators have to walk through to get from their offices to the Capitol to go to session. So that's like the perfect place to be seen, to be loud. And we're going to do activities there to be visible and spot legislators as they walk by and make sure that they know, hey, look at all these people that are here for New York Heat. And depending on who they are, we might say, thank you so much for championing it, get it across the finish line. Or we might say, hey, you know, we still need you to co-sponsor the bill. But this is making sure that even if a legislator's office didn't give us a meeting, that they can't hide from us and that they see that there's so much support here for New York Heat. So for about an hour, we're gonna do activities in this hallway all together in kind of a big horde. There will be some singing and some dancing, but we'll also be looking out for legislators so that we can kind of hail them down and say, hey, will you take a photo with us? Or, hey, do you have a moment to talk about New York Heat? And then, we'll do that for about an hour. But then we also want to make sure that everybody gets to visit with their own assembly member. So we'll break off into small lobby teams and do drop-offs at your own assembly member's office. And whether they're a sponsor of the bill or not, we want them to know that you came up to Albany to fight for New York Heat. And so we'll do drop-offs of these adorable bouquets of lollipops that are getting made. And they have fun stickers on it that say, don't suck, pass New York Heat. Or don't lollygag, pass New York Heat. So we'll deliver these fun lollipops as well as a letter that says, hi, I'm a constituent. I want to make sure that you fight for New York Heat to get passed in the budget. We'll document all of this for social media and do our rounds at our own assembly members' offices in small groups. So those are the kinds of lobbying that we'll be doing, depending on your assignment for the day. But we're going to play a little game. While we're doing that line the halls sort of lobbying, it's really helpful if you can start, if you know how to recognize legislators so that you say, oh, here comes this person, and you know, make sure that they get seen and spoke to by activists. So we're going to test the people on this call's knowledge, see who you recognize, if you can identify different legislators. You can go ahead and unmute yourselves. We're going to just see how this goes. Who here knows who this woman is? Who can identify the lady on the screen?
That's Pat Fahey.
Wow, awesome. That is Pat Fahey. Who is Pat Fahey?
Pat Fahey was my assembly member until redistricting, and she is going to be running for the state senate, and that shouldn't be a problem for her, so we might not have her in the assembly much longer.
Thank you, Jill. Good eye. Not only is Pat an assembly member who's running for Senate, but she also happens to be the prime sponsor of New York Heat in the Assembly. So she is our champion in the Assembly, and she represents the Albany area. Thank you. Let's see, who do we have next? Who can recognize this person? Just shout it out. Who is this person on the screen?
Liz Kruger.
Nice. I see Mimi tied maybe with Bill at the same time. Awesome. Liz is Pat Fahey's counterpart. She is the champion of our bill in the Senate. And she is also the chair of the Finance Committee. She's an important member up there. So great. If we see Pat or Liz, we can say, hey, thanks for New York Heat. Let's get it done. We're there to back them up. Great. Let's see who's next. Who can name this guy? Who's this fella?
Hasty.
Nice job, Mimi. All right, who is Hasty?
Speaker.
He's head of the assembly.
Yes, this is the man to influence. At the end of the day, when we have those budget negotiations, it will be Speaker Hasty in a room with Governor Hochul and Senate Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins negotiating the Senate. So all of this work focusing on the assembly has been with an eye towards influencing this man. So if you see him in Albany, make sure you say, Speaker Hasty, pass New York Heat. Important guy to recognize. Awesome. Let's see who's next. Who's this person?
Andrea Stewart Cousins.
Great job, Jill. Awesome. And who is Andrea Stewart Cousins?
The leader of the state Senate.
Fantastic. You guys know your stuff. Let's keep it moving. Who's next? Now we're getting a little harder. Now we've got these like main sponsors and leaders. Who might this one be? Now we're getting into the more obscure. I'll admit, I did not know this is what this person looked like until this slide was made visible to me. Anybody?
The Dinowitz?
It is not Dinowitz.
I'm completely stumped.
John knows who it is. Where's John?
I don't know which John, but I saw John Pope shaking his head. I think I'll have to just tell you. So we might not have too many people from Rockland County on the call right now. This is Assembly Member Zabrowski, who is an Assembly member from Rockland County. All right, let's see who's next. Who do we got? Oh, maybe you didn't read it yet. Anybody know who this woman is?
Bonus points if you can pronounce her first name correctly.
Anyone know who this person is?
Solage, but Michelle Solage. I don't know how to pronounce her first name.
That's how I think it's pronounced. I think you got it. So great. This is Michelle Solages. She represents Long Island and Eastern Queens, and she is chair of the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus. So great. I think we've got a one or two more. Way to go, Francesca. Okay, who knows who this person is?
Is that Glick?
You got it.
Woo!
Nice. Deborah Glick, she is the chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee in the Assembly, a committee that most of our bills end up going through. So great. Deborah Glick, her district is in Manhattan. And who can recognize this one? Anyone know who this is?
D.D. Barrett
You got it. Who was that? Who said that?
was Bill.
Nice. Good work. Dee Dee Barrett. She is chair of the Energy Committee and has a district in the Hudson Valley. So that is Dee Dee Barrett, an important member of the Assembly. Who knows who this dapper guy is? Who recognizes
Parker.
Parker? Everyone knows Parker. All right, Parker's chair of the Energy Committee in the Senate and has a district in Brooklyn. I think we've got a Parker constituent or two on tonight's call. And great. And everyone can shout out this one. Who's this person?
Oko.
Oko.
Kathy Hochul
Very photoshopped.
is on the news spreads all the time.
The most powerful political operator in the state. She can give us what we want, for better or for worse. Governor Hochul. If you see Governor Hochul at the Capitol, then you know, give her big yells. Make sure you're heard. We love picketing Hochul. So that completes our Name That Legislator game. Just giving you a taste to get ready to spot them while they walk by in Albany on Wednesday. But back to prepping for Wednesday, I think I'm going to hand it over to Andra to remind you about what to do to get ready for Wednesday.
Thank you, Laura. So here's our get ready checklist. First of all, it is not too late to join us on March 13th, and it's not too late to invite your neighbor or your friend to come with you. It's fun to fill a car and bring a bunch of people to Albany and show them around. And so I put the sign up link into the chat. So the rest of this list is from last year, but I think that it is still relevant because we're still really trying hard to keep everybody safe. So if you can, please take an at-home COVID test before you come. And if you're not feeling well, it is perfectly okay to stay home. There's a lot of other ways that you can help us and keep everybody well at the same time. So we're asking that people get to the buses on time. Laura wants everybody at the buses between 7 and 7:15. Because that's the loading time, and you don't want to be late. You don't want to make the bus wait. Well, the bus won't wait, and you don't want to get there a few minutes after the bus has left. So please get there on time. We suggest wearing comfortable shoes and clothing. It's just nicer when you're running around the Capitol that you've worn your more comfortable shoes rather than your cutest shoes. We're asking people to bring water bottles. We're going to have water coolers available to us like we did last time in January. We recommend that you wear your mask, especially in crowded areas like the bus or like some of the spaces where we're going to be. It's going to be pretty tight quarters. And again, we're just trying to keep everybody well and make everybody feel cared for and safe. And also, we will have signs for everybody. But if you do bring something of your own, it's a reminder, no sticks, and make sure that there's no scissors or tape in your backpack, because that could delay you going through. You'd have to like throw them out somewhere. It could be very annoying. Next slide, please. So this time we have a new home base for the day. We'll be in the Legislative Office Building on the second floor. Those are rooms 211 and 211A. So here I took a picture of the hallway as you're heading towards the elevators to go up into the LOB. The most convenient elevator is the east elevator. And when you go up in that elevator, then you would take a right-hand turn out the elevator and walk down that hall to the very end, past the Assembly Post Office, and then you would get to room 211 and 211A. There's one door for both. So in those rooms, you'll be able to check in if you're not on a bus, because we're going to do check-ins on the bus to expedite things when you arrive. And we'll have people standing with clipboards out here to check you in if you haven't checked in on a bus. In the rooms, there will be tables and there will be chairs. There will be 40 chairs in each room, so there will be some space to sit down and relax a little bit. We'll have sandwiches for everybody. We'll have some snacks for everybody. And there will be space for you to leave your coats and some bags if you want to, like I would say, tuck them under chairs, things like that. We'll make it work. It's a bit tighter quarters than we had before, but there's also a very special thing. Right in the bottom photo on the right-hand side, you'll see some double doors. And those doors lead to a secret staircase that brings you right down to the first floor, almost to the security point. So it's like this shortcut that I just learned about last week. I'm pretty happy about sharing that with you tonight. Next slide. Okay, so we've gone over the budget landscape. We've learned how crucial it is that we take action, and especially calling our Democrat Assembly members. They need our encouragement not to let up at this time. They need our encouragement to fight back against the fossil fuel industry misinformation that they are getting. They need our encouragement to let them know that constituents back home are really expecting them to go to the mat for the New York Heat Act. So we have a calling tool that we want to work on right here this evening. So if you click on the link, okay, I can put that in. If you click on that link, it allows you to make calls and or send emails and post on Twitter. Tonight, we're going to take this action. If you copy that link into your browser, you can click on it, enter some info, then you'll scroll down and click on the button that says call, and it'll have your number there. And that call tool will want to step you through 3 calls. But tonight, you can also use the star function to just go to the one where you're calling your assembly member, if they're a Democrat, and make that call. If your assembly member is not a Democrat, you can skip to the call where it has you calling the Speaker of the Assembly Hasty. And I say, let's take 5 minutes and work through this tool, because then you'll feel more confident sharing it with your friends tomorrow. Okay, so let's everybody take a moment and get that going. And when you're done, you can just write done in the chat.
Andre, if my legislators are Republicans, what should I do?
So I suggest that you make the call to the Speaker of the Assembly Hasty, and tell him where you're from. You know, you don't say you're a constituent if you're not. Tell him where you're from in the state, and that you really want the New York Heat Act to pass in the budget because it's really important for all New Yorkers.
If you have questions about how to make this work, just feel free to type them into the chat, and Andra and I will try to help you.
Renewable Heat Now. Thanks so much for taking action with us to get the New York Heat Act passed for cleaner heat and lower bills. If you're following along on your computer or phone, use the script on your screen. When you get connected with your legislator, tell them
So when you're done, come back to the Zoom and put a note in the chat so we know that you're finished. Some of you are probably still going, but I only had Hasty to call, so I'm done.
Right, and since my assembly member is a Democrat, then I only made that call. And maybe I'll call tomorrow and call Hasty. Okay, so I think I'll be moving on now to the next slide. Great. So last month we premiered a 4-minute video, a New York Heat hype video, and I thank everybody who shared that out. This time we have a quick 30-second version for folks to share, and we also have instructions on how to share it. So I'm popping that into the chat. Thank you for the last calls that are coming in now. Thank you so much. So we have this 30-second video that we'd like you to share on social media if you're on. And the link that I put into the chat goes to a Google Doc that gives you like the text and how to find the video and all that. So another thing we're asking people to do in the coming weeks is to join a call relay with our friends at New York Renews. And that's the second link that I just put in. They are doing a 3-day call relay from March 13th to 15th. And the New York Heat Act is part of their climate jobs and justice package. So we're joining forces with our allies and joining the call relay that they've put together. And the link that I put in is the sign-up form. So I hope that everybody will sign up, and we'll also share that out in an email tomorrow. And then I cannot emphasize this enough. Cloud number 3, the biggest one, the most impactful thing that you can do right now to help pass New York Heat is to keep calling your Democrat assembly members and also get your friends, family, and neighbors to make calls too. So right now, I'm going to pledge that tomorrow I will get 10 people to make calls. And I wonder if I could get you to think about it and to put your pledge in the chat so that I can imagine tomorrow during the day all these calls rolling in to all these assembly members. I think that that would be a really good thing and come at a very important time. So who's pledging what? All right. Any more? Anyone else? Well, thank you. That will be really great. And next slide, please. And another thing that would be really good if you did it right tonight would be to register for the April 4th Power Hour so that you don't forget and so that you get reminders from us. So next month's Power Hour will again be a Thursday, April 4th, again at 7 p.m. as usual. And it's going to be a doozy because the budget will have just come out on April 1st, or it could be late. But by that time, we'll know what's in the One House budgets, and we'll be able to talk about either the budget or the One House budgets and all the strategy that we need to adjust and who are our targets then, and what do we need to do to pass this act if it didn't pass in the budget, but it might have, so it might be a celebration. You're not going to want to miss it. It'll be really amazing. So I hope that you will be joining us for that and bring other people in too, because sometimes it's really great to bring people in when you're celebrating a win, and then they'll come and join the party, the battle with you next time. Or we would need, if we don't win in the budget, or if it's still up in the air, we'll need a lot more people making calls and taking action. So please register and share that link around. And next slide, please. So just a quick go over of the actions that we're going to be taking in the coming weeks. Please come with us to Albany. Please bring friends. Please call and email your Democratic Assembly members tomorrow and early next week as much as you can. Get as many people as you can involved doing it with you. Please share out the 30-second New York Heat video with that helper tool that was in the chat, and we'll also be sending you all these links in an email tomorrow. And finally, register for the April 4th Power Hour. And I thank you so much for being here tonight. And please keep making those calls and sending those emails. And see you in Albany next Wednesday.
Thanks everybody so much. Claire, do you want to unshare real quick? I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks to all of our presenters and to Claire who did the back end, and to all of you for being part of this amazing movement.